Welcome to the Executives Lounge. This is your podcast host, Christine Fauner. We are officially in season 2, where we focus on redefining leadership, one amazing story at a time. Let's get started. Well, I am excited to bring a new guest to you today. Nikki Gianni is here with us. She is the president and leadership coach of the Leadership Architect, which she also is known for as Gianni Consulting Group. It happens to be her last name. Nikki was active military for 10 years, and she spent another 15 years as a civil servant working for the Department of Defense. And she has a real high passion for helping women in leadership, specifically in military and starting out in leadership, really find themselves in their ability to grow into what's possible. So I'm excited to bring Nikki to the table today to have a discussion together about her leadership, her story, and how she got here today. Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we were talking about, really looking at what is your story and how did you get to where you are? And I'll be honest with you, I always think that the stories coming from military backgrounds are so interesting to those of us that are civilians who haven't been there. So I would love for you to just share your story about how you've kind of straddled both worlds for a couple decades now.
Yeah. So it was kind of crazy. I went to college at Arizona State, and my next door neighbor, who ended up being my husband, he kind of introduced me to the military, and because he was an Air Force veteran, and we hung out with these two other guys that were veterans that he worked with at the work study. And after about 2 years of going to school there, I was working full time, going to school full time. I was kind of broke, and I'm like, oh gosh, isn't it 2 years of this? And so one day I just said, hey, I think I'm going to join the Air Force. And he said, oh, okay. I wouldn't mind being independent. That was not necessarily a good thing.
I love that he went from your neighbor to husband to dependent.
Yeah, to dependent. Yeah. It ended up being the greatest decision I ever made. I was 21 when I went in, which is a little older than most. And I was an avionics technician at first. Went to almost a year of school for that. And then I recognized when I got to my first duty assignment that I hated it. It was just not, I didn't hate it. Let me say that differently. It was just kind of boring. It wasn't my
What do you like? This is a great point, though. What do you do when you realize you've gone and invested in this pathway that's not yours? The average person changes careers 3 times in a lifetime. So
Mhm.
you've done it now at the age of 22. Like, what do you do?
Right. So I'm like, I don't know. So I said, okay, well, if I go back to school and finish my degree, then I can either apply for officer training school, or I'll get out and finish my master's degree and get out and go do something else. I applied for officer training school and got it. And I got to be contracting, which is what I wanted because I was business major. And yeah, so I went to officer training school, and that was a great decision too, because you get to be a leader so fast at that point.
Yeah, tell me about that, because I used to work in C-level executive recruiting in New York, which
Mhm.
you're also from, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
we'll talk about that
technically.
in a minute. It was always so interesting to me, the people that would come in at these high level C level positions that
Mhm,
came from military, and
mhm.
they had this really wonderful background of early leadership.
Yeah. Well, so when you're in, so there's two pieces of the military, right? So there's the enlisted side, which are basically like the technicians, and then the officers who are the leaders. And so I went from the worker bee to the leader. And so they throw you into leadership positions immediately. Now,
Mhm.
it's kind of a running joke, like, oh, the lieutenants, they don't know what they're doing. And we just like get told what to do by senior enlisted members, right? And they just teach us what to do and how to treat people and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so we get to lead from the very beginning of our officer careers, whether you like it or not. And if you aren't meant to be a leader, then you should not be an officer. So basically, it's just a bunch of type A people, like all revved up and ready to go and very competitive. And yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty intense too. Like some of them are, and where I was stationed, my first officer assignment was in Boston, the Boston area, and it was an acquisition base. And that means that there's no flight line. It's just a bunch of office buildings, and it's very corporate like. And but there was 400 company grade officers, which is the junior level, right? 4 years and under. 400 of us on this little tiny base of maybe 5,000 people. I had a very tight-knit group of people in my first 4 years as an officer, which was really nice.
I mean, you really grew up in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And what made you decide to move into this new sector of executive leadership coaching?
Well, so after 25 years of doing all sorts of jobs, I mean, I was stationed at 8 different locations and did a whole bunch of different things. I was senior leader for about 15 years. And I kind of was like, okay, it's time for me to make a change. I had to take downgrades to follow my ex-husband, who was active duty Army. And so for 10 years, I followed him. And I didn't really like not being the big boss anymore, because I couldn't make decisions for myself and for the rest of the group as easily as when I was in charge of everybody. So I said, okay, you know what? I think it's time to move on and make a change. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I said, okay, let me try consulting. So I tried that at first. And then I was like, oh, no, I think I want more one-on-one, interaction. And I love leadership. I'm good at it. I've transformed organizations, been so lucky to have great bosses in those situations where they supported me. And I wanted to teach people how to do that because there's a lot of trial and error in leadership, right? I mean, you make a lot of mistakes as a leader. And if I had a coach when in my first 5 years or so, it'd be really good, because we do all this for executive coaches and executive coaching, C-suite people. But it's like by the time they get there, it's like almost too late to like mold them to doing certain things the right way. We might be having to fix stuff as opposed to just enhancing their strengths. So yeah, I think trying to get to new leaders will really give them a head start in their career by giving
I
them.
think too, it's just giving this opportunity to recognize potential early on and then help mentor, advocate, coach in so that these these new leaders have a platform to grow. I think a lot of people with leadership potential don't have that. They don't have the invitation or the platform. And so you lose them. And you have these people that have this great potential to be good leaders and you've lost them.
Right. And it's really sad. And so the military really, when you're an officer, you definitely get a myriad of training, right? And we have mandatory training that we have to do, but it's still not perfect, right? And we still don't get a lot. Plus, we have a lot of bosses who are not military, and they weren't trained. So if we can help those people who have not gotten what we get, it would be fantastic. And so that's what my goal is.
Well, and I know when we first chatted that you talked about really using some of the research that you've played around with and looking at some foundational practices where you're really trying to help women, specifically brand new to leadership, be able to pop out of some of the pitfalls that we find in the first 2 to 3 months.
That's right. Yeah. So my goal is to say, hey, if I can get you right when you walk into your new leadership job, then I can give you a really strong foundation of knowledge that you can use for the rest of your career. And it will strengthen your relationships with your employees and with your supervision and with yourself. When you know stuff, you feel good. You feel confident, right? As opposed to, oh God, I don't want to make a mistake. That whole imposter syndrome. I know it's a played out term, but it's real.
But it's real.
It is.
We all feel it. It's real.
Yeah. I did a survey on LinkedIn and I said, hey, if you had anything that you can, get training on that you wish you had when you were first leader, what would it be? And they said to how to not feel like a fraud, because they're not frauds. Obviously they were chosen for the position for a reason, but you're not feeling very confident when you first walk in there. That's for sure.
I know, I've worked in strengths-based leadership for a little over 15 years and utilized it in my own foundational leadership practices and in coaching others. And I know that's a passion place for you as well.
Yes.
I remember you saying it's a life-changing opportunity to learn about yourself. Tell me about how you're using that and how it's changed your leadership perspective.
I actually have my top 5 strengths from the Clifton Strengths Finders on the side of my computer, right?
Yeah, I keep mine up on my wall too.
I love it. And it was so interesting and how those strengths are totally me. There's something about knowing what your strengths are and being able to focus in on them as opposed to your weaknesses. Like a lot of times people get, when they get feedback and then it's negative, it's about their weaknesses. And it's like, you know what, man, don't tell me about my weaknesses. Tell me how I can use my strengths better. Then you'll be a better leader and I'll be a better employee, you know? And that's something that we don't teach people.
Yeah.
And so I
I
love it.
think I think too, the power of the strengths also is that I like to remind people that there are 34 strengths in the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment,
Mhm.
and we all have all 34 strengths.
Yes.
And if you also can take the time and the investment to learn about all 34, you can start to strategize. And you and I are both strategic. You
Mhm.
can start to strategize your conversations, your relationships, your approaches to things because you understand other people's strengths as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing. I really do enjoy, I enjoyed learning about all the different strengths and how they apply to me. And then I started thinking about my employees and how they apply to them. And I'm like, oh, yes, I know how to use it that way and this way and that way. And it's really enlightening.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, um, I was having a real difficult time with a specific employee, and I just felt like we were not having the same conversation.
Mhm.
And I remember telling a mentor of mine about it and was explaining the conversation and how I was frustrated.
Mhm.
And his response to me was, "Well, Christine, you're speaking from your top strength and he's speaking from his top strength, and they're very different. My
Mhm.
top strength is strategic learner. His top strength was futuristic individualization."
Mhm.
So he was all about the unique person, ideas, where to go. And here I am, like, I just want this done. I just want to get
Right.
it done. And I
Yeah,
want to
let's
get done
do it.
super fast. And I want to get it done very efficiently. How do we do it?
Mhm.
And when I realized I was speaking from the wrong perspective and I switched it, he became one of my best team members,
Isn't that
most
crazy?
effective.
It's so crazy. And it's, I guess you can break it down really simple to do that, like the 5 love languages. It's very similar in nature, right?
It
You know,
is.
'cause like, okay, he's a gift giver and I'm a quality time person. So how are we going to deal with that? But if I know that you're a gift giver, then, and you know that I'm this, so
Yeah.
it's very helpful.
Nikki, have you been in my bedroom lately? Because this sounds like a conversation I just had with my husband.
That's awesome.
Well, that's kind of the thing about these things too, right? Is, the more we learn about these ways in which we can utilize tools to focus on the relationship building, the
Mhm.
more it actually does help us in our personal and professional lives.
It really does. It crosses over for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Um, well, I wanted to know too, we've talked about how we've utilized strengths and how we've grown into these spaces of passion places, really finding that passion place for being a leadership coach. I mean, that's a really unique place, and it's not for the faint of heart to be able to work with all these different kinds of people and help them step into their own
Mhm.
leadership in that way. What is your biggest roadblock right now that you're still trying to figure out?
How to be able to accomplish everything that you have to as a solopreneur, man. Oh, God.
Man, you would be a billionaire if you figured that out.
It's exhausting. Okay. I'm just going to admit it. Right. Because like, and I have the ability to compartmentalize and, the whole diffuse focus that women have, but I have focus too. But there's just so many things, like a list doesn't even cut it. It's just like, how do we get all this stuff done? And I feel like a toddler, when as far as being an entrepreneur, because I'm learning so many things and it's constant. It's every day. Every day I'm learning more and more and more. I mean, now I know how to do WordPress. Oh, well, that's something that I never thought I would have to know. And it's just so crazy how I went from this giant bureaucracy, working for the federal government to me. And it's like, and I would complain about the bureaucracy. And now I'm like, oh, I wish I had that
Oh,
bureaucracy to
I
help
really
me
wish I
out.
had some systems and processes and people.
Yes. It's like now I got to make them all myself. Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Well, I
Yeah.
think this is the thing too about, I've built my own business as well. And, this entrepreneurial space is not for the weak need or the empty stomach.
Definitely
I
not.
think the thing is though, you realize, there are some things that you're really good at, and that's why you started your own business. And then
Mhm.
there are things where you're like, well, I really don't find any joy in that. you telling me I have to do that and I find no joy in it, or tell me I
Mhm.
have to do that and I have no idea how to do that?
Right. And so I guess you have to make some decisions, right? You can either say, okay, well, I'm going to do it anyway because I have to, because I don't have the option of paying somebody else to do it. Or you can, once you get a little bit further along, then you hire some folks. Like I can't wait to hire my first VA, my virtual
Mhm.
assistant, because I know I will give them so much to do because I'll know how to teach them how to do it, right? Because of my experience. So,
Well, I think too, one of the challenges of this that I'm thinking about is it takes away the energy and creativity from the stuff that you are really good at, that you
mhm,
need to be on the ground doing.
yes.
And so you're doing all this administrative stuff, or you're doing all this like WordPress, like website stuff. And then you're like, oh, yeah. And I have to make a few phone calls to people that, I really think would be great to talk to you about how to grow my business. And you're like, well, I don't feel like doing that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like you have to you have to manage your energy as well as your time, right? Like, okay, that's something that's easy that I don't really like, but it's easy, so I can do it, right? As opposed to, okay, that's really hard and I have to do it, but I don't want to do it. It's challenging. That's the most challenging thing for me, for sure. Because I'm like, okay, well, when am I actually gonna get to do what I want to do, which is coach, right? And that's like such a minuscule piece. It reminds me a lot of when I was an ROTC instructor. I thought, like, oh, I'm going to get to teach. Yay, I love teaching. I think that was about 10% of my time because we had so much administrivia to do because we were this, a detachment, which is basically a unit. So we had to have all the different programs in place. So I was like, oh my goodness, I had to do so many things that I did not want to do that I didn't know how to do. Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing.
And speaking of challenges, I thought this was a great story example of those opportunities to really take challenges as transformational moments. And I'd love for you to tell us about when you were a brand new captain and you were heading into this position
Sure.
and what happened.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just coming off of maternity leave and I was given this awesome opportunity to be a flight chief, right? A flight commander. And that was pretty rare in the acquisition community because there's so many of us, like I said, 400 people, right? For like all these little, very hard to get a leadership position, even though we all want to be leaders. So, and it was because nobody wanted it because it was like a ragtag group of people, right? And that were not really performing and it was a mess. So I'm like, okay, well, this will be my opportunity to shine. I'll fix it, And I only had a few years of experience in contracts. So I definitely wasn't the expert. And a lot of times people think, oh, you have to be the expert to be the leader. No, you don't, right? You don't. Thank goodness, or else I would never have been a leader. So I don't have any strong expertise in these things. I use my folks to get the things done, which is what you're supposed to, right? So anyway, so I walk in there and there were people that were just sitting around, like not even working. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And they're like, nothing. And I'm like, what do you mean nothing? Like, there's a lot of work to do. And they're like, yeah, well, this guy, he doesn't want to give me any work because he doesn't like me. What? So I go over to my boss and I'm like, hey, why aren't these people working? Why aren't they doing stuff? And he's like, oh, well, they just don't know what to do. They're just bad. They take forever. Da, da, da. And I'm like, well, that's unacceptable to me. We're paying them. What are you talking about? So I would sit down with these people and walk them through the stuff, even though wasn't great at it, but I guess I knew enough to help them feel more confident. And I got them going and started to really get going and get going. And I was only there for 9 months because then I moved. I did what they call permanent change of station. I PCSed into the new into my instructor job. But I basically turned the whole place around in a very short period of time. I mean, the guy that I took over for, he was doing stop work orders on every single contract that you could think of. And I'm like, that's like a big deal in contracts to do that, right? And I'm like, why are you doing this? And he's just like, because he was just so fed up with everybody.
The easiest way to get rid of people is to get rid of people, I guess, right?
Right. Thank goodness he moved on. Oh my God. So yeah, But we can't just do that because we have these things called contracts in place. We can't just like not do anything with them.
People don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to make everybody's life a living hell. And I'm going to be the most curmudgeon-y a-hole you'll be able to find. And I'm not going to do anything for work because I don't really care. Nobody actually wakes up for their day that way.
No.
Nobody wants that. People want joy. They want happiness. They want to feel like they're contributing to something important.
Mm-hmm.
If you can tap into that, that's like half the battle. I know you had a recommendation for a book that
Mm-hmm.
aligns to that, actually, I think.
Yeah. It's called It's Your Ship. It was an awesome book. It was about this commander of a ship who walks in, and it's the worst frigate in the fleet. Okay. And everybody's just miserable and everyone wants to get off the ship, blah, blah, blah. And he recognized that everybody was just being micromanaged, and he started saying to people, hey, listen, if you have suggestions to make this better, please come to me, tell me, open door policy. And one of the things that I really liked that stood out to me, one of the stories was this guy comes in and he's like, hey, I have to paint this ship like every 6 months. It's really stupid. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Explain. He's like, well, because, there's these, washers that have to go on all the, the bolts that are outside, and they're not stainless steel. So when the water hits them, they make rust and they drip and it looks disgusting. It's like, if we were to just spend a little bit more money, like maybe a few cents more on each, washer, we wouldn't have that. And we wouldn't have to paint the ship all the time. And he's like, what? This is fantastic. And so he implemented it, and they have this program in the military where it's called the IDEA program, where you could submit it and you can get money for it if you are successful with and they did that, and he saved thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, not having to paint ships all the time. And he changed it to the best frigate in the fleet, excuse me, and nobody wanted to leave. So it's amazing what you can do. One person can really make a difference.
Well, I think it's just being able to listen to what is happening on the operational level at the ground floor,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to really hear what the possible solutions could be, and then trying to make that happen.
Absolutely.
The book is called It's Your Ship by Captain D. Michael Abrashoff.
Thank you.
And that's it. You're right, though. It's a great example of how leaders can listen.
Yeah. Listening is, as the leader, you don't do most of the talking, you do the listening, and because you're supporting them, right? They're your folks are going to make you either look great or look really bad, depending on how you treat them and, what kind of training you give them, all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that I never understood about people, as like taking like when a leader takes the credit for somebody, somebody else's work, because it's like, well, if you just let them shine, you're going to look good. I don't get it. Like, why are you taking all the credit for this? It's just, that doesn't make sense. So yeah, being a good person actually pays off.
Yes. If there's any takeaway from today, people, it's being a good person really does pay off.
It does.
We've talked a lot about business and work and professionalism. I know there's a whole nother aspect of your life that you've really experienced and that you have some pride in. And I'd love to talk about, kind of on the personal side, how you got to where you are today, and also maybe some of those pieces that you're really proud of.
Well, so I've had some challenging experiences in my life, and it's, you never know what's going to happen, right? It's like a 1 in a million chance that these things happen to you. I had a daughter who passed away from ovarian cancer.
Oh.
It was 2 weeks from her first birthday. Like, it was totally crazy and random. I mean, who was born with ovarian cancer? Like, have you ever heard of that? I sure as heck didn't. And especially when I was 26 years old, right? I'm, thinking I'm going to have this baby. I'm going to, be a mom forever and it'll be great. And then this crazy thing happens, and it really sucked. And, but it really gave me a lot of different perspectives on life that you would never get, especially at that age. You just have to live life to your fullest, and we don't have enough time in our lives. I can't believe I'm already at this point. I'm like, my son is 19. I'm like, what, 19? Like, where did all the time go? And I was so lucky to have her. A lot of people say, oh, well, I wish that never happened to you. And it's like, well, no, I'm very glad that it happened to me, because she was phenomenal. She was a phenomenal person. I can't even imagine what she would have been able to do, if she got the chance to. But everybody has their purpose in life, and I think she was here to enhance people's lives while she was around, because she was a piece of cake, that kid. Oh my God, she was so cool.
How about the second one? How was the second one?
Oh, yes. I think so. I honestly believe that my daughter Naya was like reincarnated in my son Lex. It's just like they look exactly alike. And my son is so healthy and happy and smart, and he's a mini me, I have to say. Unfortunately, my first husband, the father of both of my kids, he had issues because of my daughter passing. And a month after my daughter passed, our best friend passed.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really big, that was harder on me than Naya, because it was unexpected. And he was our rock, right? And so he ended up becoming a full-fledged alcoholic and drug addict, and became very violent and abusive for the last 2 years of our marriage. And I hid it really well, let's just put it that way. And you can never judge anybody in that position until you're in it. And even then, everybody's different. But I finally figured out a way to get out of it. And thank goodness I was able to make money and not have to rely on him for everything.
What was the catalyst for you that you were like, this is it? I know I'm strong enough to do this.
So it was kind of like the perfect storm, I guess. So I was offered a bunch of money to get out of the Air Force, and which was great. He did not like that because he was afraid that the gravy train was going to end, right? Because that's what he called the military, the gravy train. So I was going to get out, and my dad wanted me to come to New York and go to my cousin's wedding. And so he bought us tickets, all three of us, me, my son, and my ex, tickets to fly out there from Phoenix. And he refused to go, and he wasn't going to let me go, right? It was a big fiasco. Anyways, I finally get on the plane, just me and my son. And my dad looks at me and he's like, what the hell is going on? And I finally was like, I needed to be pulled out of that situation
to see it.
And I knew it was happening. I knew it was bad, but I was trying to cover it up and protect everybody, protect him, protect me, protect my family. I didn't know what he was going to do. I didn't know how he was going to behave. And so my dad was great. He helped me out. I stayed there for about 2 weeks, and then I finally went back and to Phoenix and to kind of close everything up. And I told him, I said, okay, I'm done. You have to go. And so I sent him back to Oklahoma with a bunch of money and a car and furniture. And I said, here, you can take care of him now, because I'm done taking care of him. And
I think material possessions become very priceless when you get your freedom back.
Oh yeah, I didn't care about any of it. I was just glad to be rid of that. It breaks my heart to see that that happened to him, because he was a great man before that.
Right. You're this like very strong, badass woman who has a story to tell. And I'm super grateful for you telling that story today, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, because that's how we become our most badass, powerful selves, is when we step into that narrative and really own who we are and what we've experienced. And that is what's made you passionate about what you do today. And anybody would be super grateful to be able to be in your orbit and learn from you. And I'm thank you for offering that up to the listeners here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, and listeners, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. It's so great.
Thanks for joining us today in the Executives Lounge, where we bust open the doors, slam through the ceilings, and make sure that we have a spot at the table and that we are the lounge. I am Christine Fauner, your executive leadership expert, continuously looking for those executive leaders that seek community, continuous learning, and have a desire to find the next adventure. Join us next time. Join our Facebook group, Roam Your Soul, and you can also find us on Instagram at Roam Your Soul. And don't forget to check out the website for upcoming adventures, www.roamyoursoul.com. And if you're looking for that next executive level leadership coach, you can find me at roamyoursoul.com/Christine Fauner Coaching.